Well, off the back of a successful Ceduna Oysterfest, it's great to catch up with the local member, Sam Telfer. How are you, Sam?
Very well, always a pleasure.
And how did you enjoy Oysterfest? Did you shuck yourself some oysters?
Oh, it's fantastic. And it was actually just great to see community able to get out and about. And yeah, there were thousands of people out in Ceduna, both locals and visitors. And yeah, there were 2,000 dozen oysters that the oyster growers had put together. It's an incredible number. And they were going down very freely, that's for sure. There were plenty enjoying the local delicacy. And I mean, it really does highlight our peninsula, and especially those guys on the west coast. The real stronghold that we are as far as oyster production goes on the Eyre Peninsula. It's 92% of the state's oysters come from within my electorate, and the great time that was had reflected not just the community but also the support that there is for the oyster industry. And
a good turnout as well, with the weather reasonably kind, I believe.
Yeah, it was a glorious couple of days, and it's special because the last couple of years have had to be cancelled with different happenings because of COVID and certain uncertainties that have happened because of that. So it was really good to be able to have an event that was able to be planned for, run and enjoyed by everyone in the community.
Now, you mentioned the impact COVID's had on those sorts of community events, but it's also obviously had an impact on public health as well, and the health workforce too. When we're looking at regional doctors, we've been talking about this last week, most of the week on Flow, about the shortage of doctors in the area, particularly on the Northern Eyre Peninsula. Just what's your involvement been in this situation so far?
Well, it's been something that's been, I guess you'd say, brewing for a while. Us on the Eyre Peninsula have sort of been at the sharp end of the challenges around recruitment and retention of GPs in particular, but also RNs and other health professionals. But GPs are what really a community can really build their health systems around. And if you don't have a doctor in place in a town, it really does undermine the long-term sustainability of our communities, especially those of us who are more isolated. So it's been something that we've been talking about and trying to get action on for a number of years. And the scary part is for mine is that it's starting to be an issue which is across the whole state and also, within metropolitan or peri-urban areas. So what has been done on the Eyre Peninsula is with the Northern Eyre Alliance that have been put together is looking at what are some of the models that can be developed, what are some of the policies and processes which we can put in place which actually suit the needs for us in regional communities. So it's what are the things we need to get in place to make sure doctors are well supported, make sure there's enough community support, but also professional support so that doctors within communities that are more remote don't feel isolated away from their profession. And when there's a feeling of isolation and a lack of certainty in any sort of professional nature, then there's a real question about sustainability into the long term. So NEFA have been putting a lot of good work in and put a proposal to the previous federal government to look at putting more funding into getting some of these practical steps in place. We've been a bit hampered, obviously, with a federal election, and that came with a change of government and a change of minister, that the communications then had to start again from the beginning. But I hope that the federal minister sees the hard work that's been done by the NEFA group and the Northern Eyre Peninsula and sees that if we can get a bit of funding into getting some of these practical steps in place, then they can be proven whether it works and then can be replicated across the state and across the nation as well, because some of these challenges around recruitment and retention of GPs are reflected of what's been happening in Western Australia or the western end of Victoria or New South Wales.
Yeah, it's a national challenge, and there is certainly a role for the federal government. Do you see a role for the state government? You had a term in office yourselves, the Liberal Party. What needs to be done at the state level to get maybe the money stumped up for a community like, say, Woodner, that's been short of a doctor on a full-time basis for a long time?
Yeah, there's absolutely a role for the state government to play, and there's the balance that we've got to get between all three levels of government, local, state and federal, because they've all got an involvement and an interest in this. You're right to highlight that I indeed have got communities across the Eyre Peninsula, from Streaky Bay to Woodner to Elliston to Kimber to Cow to Cleve, that are all being challenged across that Northern Eyre in particular around a business model and a long-term sustainable model for GPs. The state government's role really is around making sure that the interactions between GP private practice and the local hospital are done appropriately and are actually take out some of the hurdles or the tripping points that have developed over time around the servicing of these emergency departments in particular within regional communities. So private practice GPs are funded through the Medicare system, so that's the private system, but there's always the need for there to be an interaction or an agreement between doctors in communities and the local state hospital network. So that's where state government's role really is crucial. We need to streamline those processes so that we've got a doctor within a town that can service the community, that can service the emergency department, and we've actually got a structure that is actually going to be sustainable for them in the long term. The days of having a single doctor in a town that's on call 24/7 and working throughout the day in their clinic, really those days are gone from my perspective. The generation of doctors that are coming through now really do want to get the balance between lifestyle and professional life right. So this is why the state government's role is really crucial in getting the setup right and making sure there's the support structures in place.
Yeah, note what you're saying there. I know there'd be some that would idealise that you still have a local GP or two, but whether that's sustainable remains to be seen. But how long are these models going to be developed or discussed? We had the Crisis Summit last week in Canberra from the Royal Australian College of GPs about the shortage of doctors across the nation. When is it going to stop? Like, we've been working and working and working. Do you see some light in the distance of where this might actually get sorted out?
Well, that's why I think the models that have been developed by the NEFA group are really crucial, that we can actually prove some of the concepts and processes. So in the previous state Liberal government term, there was an investment into a rural generalist program, which is around training of GPs for the nuances of practice within regional areas. A doctor within a regional community is expected to be an expert on every subject matter when it comes to health, from the very young to the very old. And the training program to put those skill sets in place was a really important one, which I advocated for a long time, and was really excited when Minister Wade announced that. And it was really telling for mine that announcement about the Rural Generalist program was made right here on the Eyre Peninsula, because we've been the ones which have been advocating the hardest for it. So getting the training in place is crucial for the medium and long term, but some of these steps that have been developed and the concepts that have been put together are really crucial for the short term. And this is what's happening at the moment. My people are crying out for there to be doctors within communities and health supports within our local communities right now. We can't wait for a tranche of doctors that are still going through their training now. We need action, and we need some of these funding to be targeted to where the actual need is in our communities.
Yeah, quite right, Sam Telfer, member for Flinders. I do note the College of General Practitioners did say on the supply side there's used to be 50% of doctors trained to be GPs, now it's only 15% or less. So that's a problem going forward in just recruiting these doctors in the first place. Thanks, Sam Telfer, for joining us today on that really important topic.
Absolutely, always a pleasure, as I said.